they now had who liked who back, what they were like, how tall they were, how rich they were, everything. And what's more, they knew that the answers were truthful. Fine, then we're talking about first impressions, but the answers were truthful. And you know, you may know that many people lie when it comes to dating. I know it's a harsh truth about the world, but sometimes people say that they're quite keen on you, and really they're just letting you down gently. And anyway, this is clearly a harsh truth for some people. At other times, people really like you, but they don't want to say because they don't want to seem too keen. 20 years of Neighbours was sustained on this basic premise. Now, that doesn't work at speed dating, because at speed dating, if you're trying to sort of preserve a bit of dignity, seem a little bit reserved, and you say no, forget it. You will never see the guy again. So forget it, you have to say yes. And if you're trying to let him down gently by saying yes, well, really you mean no, that's not a good idea either, because then the pervert has your email address and your phone number. So you have to tell the truth. You have to tell the truth. So these economists have the truth, and they have all this information. So what do they discover? What do they discover? Well, they discovered some things that are not that surprising, and they discovered some things that I think are surprising. So what's not surprising? Well, one thing that isn't surprising, for example, is that women, on average, we're talking about averages here, everyone's different. Women, on average, prefer tall men, which I'm very pleased about. I'm 6'3". Here's an interesting one. Women prefer rich men. Men do not prefer rich women. Men prefer slim women. What a surprise. I'm just the messenger. So, and of course there's a lot of variation. There's a lot of variation in all of these things. And so you have all this information. Here's something else that didn't surprise me. The typical woman's report card basically says date number 1, no. Date number 2, no. Date number 3, yes. 4, no, 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 yes, no, no, no. Typical woman's report card. Typical man's report card. I said it wasn't surprising. Okay, so that. Now, where's the economics in all of this? Well, this is a market. Okay, we're in a competitive situation. When I say it's a market, I'm not saying it's a market like the kind of markets you see advertised in phone booths. It's not that kind of market. We're not talking about money changing hands. But it is a competitive market. There's a supply and there's a demand. Now, the question that economists wanted to answer was, do the romantics basically have the right view of human nature, or are the cynics right? Well, the romantic view of human nature is, well, at its extreme, there is one special person out there for all of us. Well, obviously not for all of us, for each of us. For all of us, they'd be busy. So, there's one special person out there for each of us. That's too extreme. But a less extreme version of that view, I think a lot of us hold. And the less extreme version is, look, there's a small group of people out there who are right for us. They meet our standards. And our standards, what we want when we're 14 years old is going to be different from what we want when we're 44 years old. But we do have standards. And if we meet somebody who, at that particular time in our life, reaches those standards, then they are dating material or marriage material. If we do not meet somebody who meets those standards, we stay single. That is the romantic model. The cynical model says, it's a market, there's a supply, there's a demand. If the supply changes, the demand had better change, because otherwise you're all in trouble. So who's right? Well, what Bello and Francesconi found studying speed dating was that when you go to a speed date and all the women are well educated, all the women are non-smokers, all the women are slim. This is a very, very promising speed date. Normally, you would expect lots and lots of the men to propose lots of dates. But actually, well, the men do propose lots of dates, but the men always propose lots of dates. The men don't propose any more dates than they would on an evening when actually the girls were not educated. They were smokers. They were not regarded as attractive by the men. the men would propose the same number of dates. The same thing is true for the women. Women propose far fewer dates. Women are more picky. But if all the guys look like George Clooney and they all have his bank account, the women will still be picky. What's going on? They raise their standards. If the pickings look good, if the market looks like it's a buyer's market, you raise your standards. And you don't want to be dating every George Clooney. Just one or two. Two, maybe. And it's the same with the men. It's the same with the men. You know, you don't want to date all of the women, just half of them. And that seems to be true no matter how attractive the women are. We're very sensitive. This is the sort of that cost-benefit analysis going on. We don't calculate it. We're not conscious of it. But we very quickly say to ourselves, the dating market is tougher than I thought. Lower my standards quickly. Propose a lot of dates. So anyway, there you go. I said it wasn't going to win the Nobel Prize, but it is a fascinating example of the weird and wonderful things that economists are doing to try to work out what makes us tick. Now, for all of that, I've described Steve Levitt's careful data work. I've described Gary Becker's theories of rational crime, rational marriage. I've described this weird picking apart of speed dating. There's something in all of this that it is a little disconcerting, that is a little Spockish, possibly even a little Darth Vader-ish. The respect for the human side, that you may be thinking, well, this is missing, Tim. You know, you're scaring us, Tim. You economists are not quite human. You don't appreciate human frailties. Well, I think that's true of some economists, but one of the heroes of the book understood human frailties very, very well. He's a man called Thomas Schelling. I almost say he was a man called Thomas Schelling. He's still alive, although he's in his late 80s. He has, I think, certainly the most interesting CV of any economist who ever lived, and an interesting CV by any standards. So he started by negotiating the Marshall Plan after World War II. That's not that interesting. But that gave him government connections and an experience with bargaining and negotiations. And he was drawn into the problem of Cold War strategy. And he became the intellectual godfather of the entire John F. Kennedy administration. All the security officials, all the security advisors, Department of Defense, all those guys. He was the man who had influenced how they thought. He was trying to understand how what he'd learned from economics about bargaining, about negotiations, could be used in the Cold War. Now, that might sound a little bit chilling. We don't like the idea of these economists and mathematicians working out how to fight a nuclear war. And true, it is chilling, but I find it preferable to the alternative, which is to learn by practicing. So he adopted this theoretical approach, but he was fascinated by the human side, always the human side. I introduced him in the book, organizing a war game where he has Henry Kissinger and McGeorge Bundy and a bunch of other serious national security guys cooped up in Camp David, and he's asked them to pretend that they are getting calls from Berlin. And the calls are coming from Schelling. And Schelling is faking an invasion of Berlin and asking them, what would you do? Forget your maths, forget your policies, what will you do? The tanks are rolling in. They say they're helping you out with riot control, and the Soviet tanks have just come across the Berlin Wall. What do? You launch your bombers. Okay, fine, they launch their bombers. What do you do now? You don't know what they want. You don't know whether they're bluffing. You don't understand everything about the situation. Information is coming through in a confusing way. It's imperfect. You're fallible. You're a human being. What are you going to do? Always obsessed Schelling. He, by the way, was also the script consultant on Dr. Strangelove, which I think is fantastic. Stanley Kubrick called him and said, I want to understand what could possibly go wrong in a nuclear war. And Schelling said, well, I've been giving this some thought. He did many other things. He revolutionized the way economists thought about, for example, racial segregation. Not just the subject, but the method, the way he went about doing it. Pushing coins around on his son's chessboard in a 1970 version of what we would now call agent-based modeling, which used sophisticated computers. He saw that logical behavior by individuals doesn't necessarily lead to a logical social outcome. And he wanted to model that process.